All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Zients, and I'll be your host for today's session, Manage a Better Classroom with Jotform. Most schools are back to in-person learning this year, at least in some capacity. But if you are an educator on the line with us today, you may be back with some uncertainty still about the year ahead and some down-to-the-wire decisions about health and safety precautions. Because of all of that, now is a great time to consider things that can make your job easier or ways to support hybrid learning. And there are many ways that Jotform can play that role. So that's what I'll be talking about here today. I will be sharing some Jotform and user-created forms with you that can help you manage the year no matter what it looks like and how it changes along the way. And I'll be sharing these in the context of some other Jotform tools that can help you manage classroom and students, as well as connect with parents. I will be out on Jotform's site throughout most of our session today, so you'll be able to see these in action and see all of the practical ways that Jotform can really be an asset to you throughout the school year. Before I go into the examples, I did want to share a couple of resources that are definitely related to this topic. First, jotform.com/education will give you, a summary of all of the different ways that Jotform can be, again, an asset to educators. It's also where you can learn more about and apply for an education discount. Also, on the topic of discounts, Jotform offers basically one of our paid plans for free to students. So if there's a point throughout the year where students might be surveying people and collecting data, Jotform is a great option for that. And you might want to send them to this link here so that they can get more information and apply for that free student survey. And finally, one of the biggest assets of Jotform is that there are so many templates available. They span industries and content types. They're created both by Jotform as starting points and by people who are using Jotform. And there's just a lot there. Of the over 10,000 templates available, over 4,000 are education templates. So regardless of what you're trying to do, chances are somebody else has already done it and you don't have to start from scratch. I definitely recommend checking that out. You don't have to be a Jotform user to go to this link and look at these. But if you are, those are a great asset to you and something that you might want to take advantage of. All right, so on that note, I am going to jump into our examples. I've categorized these examples into three different main categories, and I'm starting with the category of evaluation for a couple of reasons. First, evaluation is important to educators, whether you're teaching kindergarten or university. It's something that teachers are using throughout the year, all the way from placement tests through final exams. And it may be the most essential part of teaching. It's how you'll decide what groups to place students into, whether they're understanding certain concepts, and whether they're ready to move on to the next level at the end of a unit or school year. And these can also be useful tools for you in ways to adjust your lesson plans as you go. If a bunch of students are failing the same question, then you know that you might need to spend a little bit more time there before you move on. I'm going to kind of use the term quizzes here to capture all of these. But again, these can be any sort of exams or tests or whatever you might be doing. When it comes to these quizzes and other exams, you may just have, yes or no questions or essay questions, but oftentimes there might be some sort of interactive element as well. And there are a number of ways that Jotform can support that. So this placement test, for example, features an image. Students look at the image and then are asked to respond to a number of questions about the image. This video quiz as well does something similar. So students would watch the video and then respond to questions about the video. This is a Jotform created form. So the language that you see here is pretty generic. It's meant to be a starting point and to show you the different questions that you can include that are along the lines of quiz questions. In order to add any elements, or if you're starting from scratch with a form, you want to open this Add Form Element toolbar, and most of what you'll use will be under the basic elements. So, for example, the questions that you see here are a multiple choice question, a single choice question, a short text question, etc. So all of those are available in basic. If you need to use payments for any reason throughout the year, probably not in quizzes, but payment definitely comes up throughout the school year in a couple of different ways. There are payment widgets. So there's a whole menu of payment widgets that you can pull in just by clicking or dragging and dropping it into your form. And there are widgets for pretty much anything else. So in this case, the video here is a YouTube widget. So if you just search YouTube in the widgets, it pops up there. You just pull it in and you're ready to go. Since, again, this is really just a starting point for any quiz that you might want to create, to edit any of these, all you need to do is click on the form and look for that gear or the question and look for the gear widget properties. So that's where you'll go to change any language that you see here. And when it comes to widgets, there's also typically a widget setting as well. So in this case, to replace Jotform's Poto mascot video with the one that you might need, all you'd need to do is replace the URL, hit update widget, and you're ready to go. Another widget that I think is useful for quizzing is a timer widget. So, clearly in this section, I'm highlighting some of the widgets and fields and some form settings that can be really helpful for the purposes of quizzing. So in this case, there's a timer widget, and I'm just going to preview this so we can see it from the student perspective. When it comes to this exam, they have their timer right at the top of the page before they even enter their name. Particularly anxious students would probably be very frustrated by this. I know I would be, but if you do have a timed quiz, especially in a remote learning situation or a hybrid classroom, it's important to make sure that all students have the same amount of time. So this counter will tick away. When the time runs out, the form will be submitted, whether it's complete or not. They can always submit before, but if not, once that timer is up, they are done. This is, again, one of the widgets. So in the settings here, you can change this from the 35 minutes to whatever time period you need. So again, very useful tool for something along these lines where you need to set a specific amount of time. You do also have some form settings where you can do something a little bit different. So in the build field here are all of the individual pieces for your forms where you can edit individual fields. The settings menu will give you settings that pertain to the form as a whole. And so in this case, under form settings here, the first option that you see on the left, you can make your form, you can disable your form. So currently it's showing up as active or enabled, but if you wanted to do something like give students only a week to submit an assignment, or maybe you want to offer extra credit to the first 5 students who respond, you can choose to disable the form after the submission limit or submission date so that students won't be able to submit after that. And when you click on that, you can change the submission limit here, and you can also change the message that they'll see when they try to submit and the form is disabled. One other quiz example, this is maybe one of my favorite Jotform examples overall because it essentially does the teacher's work for them. This is a very brief quiz that's using just a single choice, multiple choice option. And when you're using this option, if you click on the properties and go into options, you'll see that you have this section here where you can choose to apply values to each of the options. So in this case, the correct answers are getting 25 points and incorrect answers are getting 0 points. So each question is totaled as students go. And at the bottom of the form is a score field that calculates the total score. So if I open those widget settings, that's summarizing the responses above. You can see that this field is gray. That means that it's hidden to students. So again, if we preview this, you can see what students see, and they don't see that score at the bottom here. But it is available to you. And so there's no danger of students seeing their score and changing responses to try to get a better score. But there's also no need for you to go in and tally everything up at the end of the quiz and see how students did. When the quiz is over, when you want to see how all of the students did and get that information, you can go back to your Jotform home screen and click the checkbox next to the form and then hit submissions at the top here. and that will bring you to the table for this form. When you create a form in Jotform, you'll automatically create a table as well. So there's no extra step there. The table is created with one column for each question, which you can see here, all the way through the score and the student's name. And as people respond, so students submit their quizzes in this case, each row will be their response. So here you can get a glimpse of how students did overall. You can see individual responses, you can see individual scores. And this is just a really nice way for you to be able to keep track of how students are doing. You can also filter or sort this, whatever you need to do to make it an interactive workspace for you. So for example, if you wanted to maybe keep track of the students who didn't get 100%, you can create a filter that says, if score isn't equal to 100, we'll apply that. Now we can see all the students who didn't score 100 on the test. We know these students probably, so we can, we'll know if this was an off day or if they tend to be struggling in math overall. But in order to help keep track of that, we can also create a new tab. We'll call this low scoring here and create a tab. So this view will always be available until you delete it or unless you delete it. So you can keep tabs on these students throughout the school year. Back on that main page, you can now remove the filter so you have access to all of the responses again. And again, continue to do whatever you need to do with it. You can also add columns into tables. So if you have math groups and you want to include a column that says what group students are in, or if you know that a student is working with a math tutor and you have a lesson plan or a learning plan for them, you can add that as an attachment. You can also connect to previous forms or tables, so you can pull in math scores from other parts of the year as well. So again, you can make this a really interactive workspace for keeping track of how students are doing, and also keeping track of how you might want to adjust your lessons as you go. One other really helpful feature of tables is that you can use tables to create a few other views. So for example, if you wanted a visual representation of how students did on this quiz, you can create a report of that. And I'll just click extended report here. And in just a few clicks, I now have a full report of each of the questions from that quiz. So I can see that 67% of students got the first one correct, and get this nice pie chart that shows very easily 89% of students, 83 and 83 on the other two. So students did pretty well overall, but this first question might be a little bit concerning. So maybe as a teacher, you look at this and think, okay, before we move on to the next section, let's review just kind of basic algebraic functions. You may also want to use something like this to share with administration throughout the year, so you can show student progress, or maybe compare notes with one of the other math teachers in your grade. You can change whatever you see here, but when it's time to share, you can hit publish to share it, or you can use preview to show it as a presentation. You can download it, etc. So a number of ways to share what you see here. All right. So the next section of forms that I've collected are feedback forms. Evaluation forms often lead to feedback forms, but similarly, feedback forms also kind of come up throughout the school year in multiple ways and really run the gamut of examples. Here, I've just pulled a few. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I did want to show the breadth of what's already available as templates. Everything from behavioral feedback forms through, if you're teaching university, you have teacher and course evals at the bottom here. So again, a lot of different variety and options. My personal favorite in this section is the group work eval, probably because I can still very strongly remember how awful group work was in school. Much easier as an adult with responsible colleagues, but in school, I know I would have really loved the solicitation of my feedback about performance of other students in my group. So this is probably helping a lot of students speak their mind. This progress report, I thought was, this is a nice example of Jotform's PDF feature as well. So you can build clean custom PDFs from any form that you have. So in this case, this is a counseling progress report. This is what the form looks like. And you can see when we look at the PDF preview that it's pulling in, each of the checked boxes there. So we have this very nice thing that we can print out, share with parents, whatever we need to share progress throughout the year. The student performance eval is also, I think, a really useful tool. I have modified this template slightly. So everything that I'm showing here is either a template that I've pulled directly from the education templates or a slightly modified version for demo purposes. So this, I imagine, could be something that teachers, especially of younger students, might use ahead of parent-teacher conferences. So here, teachers can share their feedback about how the student is doing in all of these different areas using this nice, clean 1 through 5 chart, and then share their overall feedback about the student progress. This would then go to the parents who can add their comments. They need to sign that they've accepted it. And then this can also be used as a single location where they can then sign up for an appointment slot during parent-teacher conference week. This appointment field has a ton of options and flexibility. So in this case, I have created this to have 15-minute sessions from 5 p.m. through 7 p.m. every day of our parent-teacher conference week, which is that last week of September. And these the gray ones that you see here that you can't select are gray because a parent has already signed up for those slots. So it does keep track of that, so there's no overbooking. When it comes time to share any of your forms, you can go into Publish to do that. Here in Publish, you see you can copy and share a link. So if you're using a learning management system, you can paste it directly into the LMS, whatever it is that you're using. It might be a general message to parents, or it might be something that you're individually sending to parents. You could also do that by email. You can assign forms, so somebody will get a link that they're expected to do something with a form, which might be useful here. Another, I think a good option here is to use pre-fill, where you have a couple of different ways that you can pull in data before you share the form. With regards to education, these top 3 are probably the most relevant. So you have manual pre-fill, where you can fill out those fields before sending. And you have form and table pre-fill, which pull in information from other places in Jotform. So if you wanted to share the results of that math quiz, for example, you could pull that in. In this case, I'm going to use manual pre-fill. So I'm going to hit add a new pre-fill here. And here I can add my student information, his ID number, his email. And, I will rate Brian on how well he's been doing throughout the year. He's doing pretty well overall, but maybe not quite as strong with interacting with his peers. Definitely learning new things. Brian, I'll leave my feedback here. If you are a teacher, hopefully you're sharing more than just one pretty vague sentence, but for the purposes of demonstration, I just wanted to keep it brief. So now I, as the teacher, have filled out everything I need to share with Brian's parents. And I can hit create here to create a link directly to this partially filled version of the form. So when I click on this here, now you see the form that I just filled out. So it links directly to Brian's form here. So let's pretend I'm the parent. I've received this from the teacher. I can now add my comments here. We agree. He's pretty quiet at home too. I can sign that I have seen this and accept it. And then I can sign up for my parent-teacher conference session all in one place. I've submitted that, so it's going to go back to the teacher for review. Just a couple of other notes here. By default, this is set so that the person receiving the form can edit the fields that have already been completed. But in this case, I don't want parents to be able to change anything sneakily after I've sent it. So I'm going to change that to read only. And in order to share this, you can just click and paste this just as I just opened it. Or if you click the vertical ellipses here, you have some send or copy URL options there as well. I'm going to go out into tables again because now I, as the teacher, have received Brian's parents' feedback as well as other student feedback. I could again use tables to just make sure that I'm not missing any responses. I have all of that here. Parents have all signed. I can follow up with parents that haven't. And I can also see where parents have signed up for an appointment slot. I mentioned that you have a couple of ways that you can add new tabs here. And so in this case, the calendar view is really, really useful for anything where there's a time slot selection. So again, I'm just going to connect to this form, the same form that I'm using currently. I will select that. Please select a 15-minute field. And now, just again, with just a few clicks, I have a calendar of all of this is the schedule for parent-teacher conference week. So I have all of those here. And before Brian's parents come in, I can even use this space to double click on Brian's submission here. I can review everything that I said. I can review what his parents have said. And in this way, I can use this maybe even during the session to kind of guide our conversation, make sure that I'm addressing all of the parents' concerns, make sure that we talk about anything I wanted to talk about, et cetera. So again, it's all in one place. And this is just a really nice, clean, seamless way to be able to view the calendar as well as the information that led to scheduling the calendar. The last section here is probably the broadest, but I felt like a group of things that pertain to signing up for things or approving or registering students was a good final group to end on. And again, this is a pretty broad category, so a lot of different options here. We have permission slips through exam registration, through talent show sign up. In this permission slip case, I've also used pre-fill to fill out the information about the field trip. So again, this could get posted to an LMS for parents to fill out and submit, and we're ready to go. I know some schools are still doing paper permission slips. So here we don't run the risk of students losing it or it's disintegrating with the condensation from a lunchbox or, whatever. It just also gives an easy way to follow up with parents who haven't submitted. This music enrollment form, like the eval form that I showed in the last example, I thought was a really nice example because it also includes everything that you might need for this particular thing in one place. So here students can sign up for band, they can identify the instrument that they play, they can say if they are interested in an alternate instrument. Parents then have this very lengthy consent section or a section to review before they consent. So you can see that kind of goes on and on. So it's got all of the stipulations for the year included here, and then the parent's date and signature. There's a separate section of permission slip for field trips or overall permission for field trips, also needing to be dated and signed. And then at the very bottom, there's also even here a section that is dedicated to ordering student apparel for band. So anything that they might need for a uniform can all be done in this same location. This is using a PayPal widget. So if I go, let me just go back to all the way back to my home here. You can, I'm going to go out so you can see the PayPal widget in action. Again, you can easily embed any payment widgets and they all function pretty much the same. First, you will add the widget from this list. You'll authenticate your account, and then you can use that to create all of the different things that you're selling. So in this case, each uniform piece is a separate product. So when it comes time for a parent to fill this out, they fill out the whole thing. The student fills out what they're filling out, whatever the case may be. When they submit at the bottom, they're next taken to the PayPal screen where they enter their payment information through PayPal, and then they complete the form. As the band teacher, there are a couple of decisions that you have when a student applies to be in band. So I'm going back all the way back to the top again. You can admit a student right away. All of the paperwork's filled out. Maybe they're a senior and they've already been in band a few years. You know them, you know what instrument they play, they're ready to go. So you can admit them to band. You may also have to, unfortunately, not enroll a student because there's just not space for them. And because there's this, secondary instrument choice, you may also approve them on the second instrument. So you have a couple of choices to make here. You may also want to get back in touch with parents if they've missed anything, or if you have any additional questions. In the settings menu, you can do this by adding an approval flow. So this is something that you can integrate into any of your forms as well. I'm going to hit create an approval flow. And this adds just a brief, a one level approve or deny flow to this form. So I can use Jotform as a space to make my decisions about students in band and then notify their parents of the decision. So what we see here is that the submission comes to me as the band teacher. I either approve and enroll a student or deny and don't enroll them. The parent receives an email based on that decision, and that's it. But in this case, I also want to add two additional options. So I'm going to open my settings here. I'm going to add a new outcome, and we'll call this approve on second. So this will be my option, the outcome for students that will go into band, but on their secondary instrument. I also want to enable this request more information option. That will give me space later on in the process to connect with the parent directly in my Jotform inbox if I have questions. So there's no need to pull their email from here, go back to my email, find the email, paste the email, all that. That can all be managed directly in here. So here, I'm just going to add an email. All of your options for this approval flow are here on the left, just like in the form builder. So we'll say send email. This will be our approve on secondary instrument. So I will add my outcome here and I will connect to end. And again, that ends the flow. And, as long as I have all of the information I need from parents, this will end with the email to them. So I mentioned Jotform inbox. You won't actually see this in action because this isn't actually a working flow at this point, but I did want to show you can get to inbox right here. And when you do have a workflow in place and you are approving things, you'll see them on this page in your inbox or in the waiting for me where you make a decision. If you need to connect with parents to get more information, you'll see a place where you can email them directly. And that particular submission will just kind of hang out in limbo until you get the information you need, after which you can then make your decision. So very useful, again, way to manage everything in one place. We just rolled out a new version of our Jotform inbox. We have Inbox 2.0 now. And just a little quick plug, we will have a webinar 2 weeks from today about the Inbox 2.0. So I definitely recommend coming to that and checking that out to hear all about inbox as well. Right. So I mentioned that was the last big category. I did have two other just quick examples here. In 2021, can't really do any sort of webinar without mentioning COVID and in this case, especially remote learning options. You may already be doing some kind of health screening. I know most schools are in session at this point. But if you're looking for an alternative or still looking for options, there are templates available for that. This one in particular is for a preschool, but again, could be a starting point for anything. If you do want to use this, you just click use template. That clones a copy of it into your account. So that's what I've been showing you in my account today. And there you can make any changes like changing out the header, whatever. This is a very brief form that parents need to fill out every morning, a pretty straightforward COVID, parent name, student name, and then those basic health questions. One really great feature of Jotform is that it's mobile and tablet responsive. So if parents forget to fill this out before they take their kid to school, they have no excuse. You can have them do it at the door before drop off, right there on their phone. And you can use that assign form feature to make sure that they have easy access to it. So no excuses for parents. You can also imagine that students are on their phones quite a bit. This also, being mobile responsive means that students don't have excuses as well. So any form can be accessed in mobile. The other survey that I have here is a remote learning survey. So I have a ton of parents and teacher friends, and I know we're all hoping to keep kids in school this year. But in the event that we do have to go back to, fully hybrid or fully remote learning, especially for newer students or students who are new to your district, maybe have just moved over from somewhere else, this can just be a helpful way to kind of gauge what their learning from home situation is and assess that maybe throughout the year. Again, never hurts to be prepared. And so just wanted to share this so it's available and can have it in your back pocket if you need it. All right. So on that note, I am done with examples. I do see that a couple of questions have come in, and I did also collect a few from registration. I've mostly addressed those throughout what I've written today, but I'm happy to take some questions. I hope that this has been helpful. I wanted to, again, show the breadth of ways that Jotform can be a really useful tool, and also the breadth of forms that are already available to you. So on that note, let's go into questions. Is there a way to generate certificates of completion for a quiz? Yeah, so that PDF editor that I showed the one example of the PDF. There is a template in there that's about, it's like a certificates type of template. So that would be a good option. Again, you can kind of create whatever you need to with the PDF editor. So I would definitely recommend looking for the PDF templates. And you should see it there. If you look under education templates, there is an example in there. We have a couple of questions about who's booked a time slot, and is there a solution for scheduling an event automation? I think that these, and I know, I think these came in before I showed that example, but tables is a great way to be able to see who's coming in when, and that calendar view will show you who's signed up for each time slot. So again, that option, the option of creating the appointment fields, creating it the way you need, and using that to build a calendar can be a really effective way to manage things like parent-teacher conferences where people are signing up for one slot, or maybe it's even chaperones for a dance, or whatever you're doing that might be related to getting people signed up and scheduled for something. So yeah, tables and the calendar view would definitely help with keeping track of that. A question about the timer quiz. Yeah, so the question is, when the limit is reached, does the form just close out? So I believe it gets submitted just as if the student were submitting it at that point. So yes, basically the answer to that question is yes. When the limit is reached, the form does just close out. Question about showing the calendar feature again. Yeah, let me go back to that example. Student performance eval, and give me 1 second here to go back. So just as part of this, I wanted to highlight the settings. Let me just highlight the settings for the appointment slot. So opening the properties here is where you can define everything that you need to define for appointments. So here you can see I have my interval set up as 5 to 7. I have my slot duration as 15 minutes, and then I have my week, the 1 week limit here. If you're accepting appointments on an ongoing basis, you just don't have to have an end date here. You can just have appointments continue however long you need to. And when it comes time to create that calendar view, you'll want to go into your table, so submissions here. And you can click Add Tab, Calendar. You'll connect to the same form. So whatever field it is that has those appointment slots in it is where you'll find that. You want to select that field and hit Create. And that's where you'll get that calendar view generated, and you can see those, all of the appointments, in this case, at the bottom here at the end of September. One of the questions that I took that came in advance that I didn't really get to go over was whether or not you can print something with signatures. So the example they gave was having students sign up for a workshop, and is there a way to print those all on one page without individual signatures? So in tables, you do also have an option to download all. And from here, you can download as a PDF. And that would be, I think that's the only way that you can get the signatures from here. So if you download as a CSV or Excel, you won't get the signatures, but PDF, you will see the signatures. Each response will be on one single page. So the signatures won't all be on one page, but again, it is a way that you can keep track of those signatures and print them out if you need to. I also know, I think this might be the last question actually, and I know that this is a little bit of a long session. So I know somebody in advance had asked about going into approvals in detail, and I wish I could do that today, but unfortunately we don't have time. But did want to mention, I know, again, I showed a use case. I know that there's interest in approvals. Still, it's a pretty new feature, rolled out a few months ago, and we do have a number of resources available there. So if you go to jotform.com/webinars, you can see all of our previous webinars. And we did 2 webinars about approvals. So there's about 90 minutes there total of walking you through the entirety of approvals. And each of those also link to other approvals resources. So I definitely recommend checking that out as a starting point. Again, it's a very useful tool for any situation like signing kids up for band or anything else that you might be doing. You could even set up approvals so that parents are approving. You just need to make sure they're the approver rather than the teacher being the approver. So a very useful tool throughout. All right. So on that note, I am going to end the session. I wanted to thank you all for being here today. Before I do, I just, again, wanted to mention that we'll have our next webinar 2 weeks from today about Jotform Inbox 2.0. So again, that's brand new. We're very excited about it. And I hope to see many of you there. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.